Hello, good evening, morning, afternoon, whatever. Good whatever. I am literally exhausted. This Mars and Pisces transit has been rough. And I'm attributing it to Mars and Pisces. I mean, it's been good, but rough. It's been interesting. Um, it's been a lot in a good way. But because it's been a lot in a good way, it's also been a lot in a not so great way, if that makes any sense. And if it doesn't, then that's fine. So today I'm going to do one of my favorite things, which is to tempt fate. My connection and my abilities by using cards that aren't cards to read. I got a box of Magic the Gathering pre-release, The Streets of New Capenna. Streets of New Capenna. I'm going to open up one of these boosters. They're set boosters. And then I'm going to do something else too. But I'm going to do this first just because I love, I don't know, because I like being unconventional, I guess. I like attempting to be unconventional. And then we'll see what's up. I know I've been gone for a minute. I feel like it's been at least 2 or 3 days since I've been live. And honestly, I should probably just go to sleep. But it's fine. I also noticed that, like, when I'm reading and I get in that flow state, because I was reading for somebody recently, and I hit that flow state, and they were like, I love when you hit that flow state. I was like, me too. So first we're going to look at the art card. Ooh. This is the art card. Which is interesting. So there's some look like elf warrior lady. She looks like a warrior. It's almost Queen of Swords. Because she is obviously some kind of warrior or fighter. But there's also an element. Ooh, if I can hang on to the card. There's also an element of poise and grace that she holds. Also, this is number 5 out of 81. It was the 5th one printed out of 81 cards, I guess, which is cool. 5 is a number of change. 9 is a number of, I guess, completion. Oh, it's the Mage's Attendant. That's who it is. The Mage's Attendant. So let's see. Ooh, I got an alternate art land card. Okay. The Forest. Just humor me, I guess, or not. Skip ahead. If you're watching this after it's live, leave and come back if you're watching this live. See, this is a forest card. And it's funny because Tuesday, one of my coworkers was talking about abandoned places all over the world. And she mentioned a nuclear power plant. It might have been Chernobyl, but I mentioned Chernobyl to her. I was like, oh, so it's like Chernobyl, where like that's the power plant that went up, and now like it's green and animals are coming back. So eventually, it might be safe for people to return to. I think you can visit Chernobyl in like one of those suits or whatever. But it's interesting that this is a forest and they're like skyscrapers and buildings here. It's interesting that this is classified as a forest, even though it's not necessarily yet overgrown by the greenery. Like the skyscraper in the building The skyscraper in the building. The skyscraper in the background is like completely untouched. Low key. The mage's attendant could be in that building. Hey Holly, how you doing? I'm opening a pack of magic cards. And then we're gonna see, I guess, what comes out. So the next card is Make Disappear. Casualty. Casualty 1. As you cast this spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power 1 or greater. When you do, copy this spell, and you may choose a new target for the copy. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 mana. As you cast the spell, you may sacrifice a creature to get it back. Oh! So this is something, it lets you counter a target spell unless the other player uses mana. And when you use this card, you can sacrifice basically any creature. Well, I guess it can't have power 0. So mostly any creature to get it back and to counter another spell. So it makes the spell disappear, right? Yeah. Ooh, that sounds pretty good. I had Arby's because I got off late. The next card is an Angel Warrior. It's an artifact creature, the Paragon of Modernity. It's has a flying attribute for 3 mana. Paragon of Modernity gets +1/+1 until end of turn. If exactly 3 colors of mana were spent to activate this ability, put a +1/+1 counter on it instead. No true angels have been created since the founding of New Capenna, but artisans have learned to craft elegant facsimiles. I heard the word facsimile lately. And it's a word I haven't heard in a while, so the definition of it exactly. I mean, if I use context clues, it's probably something that like has the guys or appears to be something else. Hey Siri, define facsimile.
As a noun, facsimile means an exact copy, especially of written or printed material. Do you want to hear the remaining one?
No, thank you. The remaining one was a verb to make a copy of. Copy, yeah. I don't think my brain would have went there. I mean, but I guess like from the context with this one, they can make copies of it. This is so interesting. And it's just interesting again because of this shiny building and the back of the forest. Like this is a forest. It's barely green. And so we have this shiny building in the back. We have this artifact angel warrior, the paragon of modernity. If it'll kind of focus. There we go. And then we have the make disappear. And so again, continuing to Patrick this. Ooh, I already got one of these. Ah, no, no. Ah, no, no. It's almost like there's something about this building that's untouched by everything. It's untouched by time, it's untouched by nature. And it's like anything that would approach it is made disappear. It disappears. And then we have this artifact angel warrior. And so I'm just going to show the rest of the cards. But it feels like there's something. Hey, Zelda, how you doing? Nufo, who this? I am exhausted. How are you? Yeah, I was talking about Chernobyl. I was talking about Chernobyl and how like nature is coming back. But looking at these, like there are some vines on the side and there are some plants here, but it's not extremely overgrown. And then there's the building that's untouched in the back. And so maybe it's the point where nature is coming in. And maybe that's why it's untouched, but it feels like it wouldn't even touch this space. It feels like something, again, it's like it's out of time, it's unreachable, something held by the mage's assistant, maybe that person who constructed the artifact angel was. It's interesting though, because artifact angel energy, it's almost like it's very remnant. It's almost like if there was a hologram in a building. Like there's an old building and there was a science people, and so there's like holograms and stuff to show like who the people were that worked there and like what happened there or whatever. Like it feels, or it's like a shell of something. It's like the being or the energy itself is long gone, but there's something that remains, right? Because it's a remnant. Well, I hope you get some time with your daughter too. Oh, snap. That's funny. I don't know what it means, but that's hilarious. So we'll just look at the rest of the cards. Next is the Waterfront District. It's another land. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can add either water or is this dark? Yeah. You can add either water or dark. You can sacrifice it to draw a card if you want. So it's the Waterfront District. It's another land, but this one is different than the forest, obviously. So it's interesting. So maybe that was its own little whatever. Now we're entering some place on the border of water. The border of water and dark is interesting though, because it feels like it's bordering on like um in layman's like subconscious emotions and stuff like that. But it's like I don't know if it's just on the outside of the realm of the perceivable. Like I don't know if it's just inside, just outside, or like further out. But it's feeling like the astrally unexplored parts. And there's is that a building? And there's something being lit up back in the back. Or maybe that's just the lights back there. I don't know. Next is the Snooping Newsy. When Snooping Newsy, this is a human rogue. That is water and dark. See, the one water and the one dark, and then this land is for the water and the dark. These are interesting. When Snooping Newsy enters the battlefield, mill 2 cards. Put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. As long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, Snooping Newsy gets +1/+1 and has lifelink. Now, my magic is still rusty, but I believe lifelink is when you deal damage, you get health back proportional to the damage that you dealt. So this could be inside of one of these buildings. Right? And it's interesting that this, I guess it would be like some kind of light. It's interesting though, because it looks like moonlight. Like that could be a moon. And it makes me think of Almrune. I think Almrune is the queen of the dark elves and the moon runes. The runes that can only be that are only visible under moonlight, and some of them only in certain phases of the moon. It's interesting though that when it comes out, you have to send 2 cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard. But if there's 5 or more mana in the cards in the graveyard, then not only does the Snooping Newsy get an attack and defense boost, but it also gains the ability to return life for the damage that it deals. And so in that, it would almost be an energy of um it's like if the journey, healing, awakening, or whatever comes with a certain price, and if that price is certain experiences, relationships, whatever, then at a certain point, it's almost like they're the things that we sacrifice in the beginning, but after a certain point in time, we see those same experiences in a different way. We see it in a new light. We see it in a way that's actually able to help further us along at some point later on. But it's almost like before we entered this emotional, connective, dark territory, we wouldn't have had the capacity or the perspective to see these same things in this way. Yeah. And there could also be a little bit about that too, where we sort of like understand the part that we played and the role that we played in the past. Because with the Snooping Newsy, it almost feels like there's an energy of like reflecting and thinking back on like maybe a previous person or a previous job or whatever, with the intention to remember like what that person did or how we were treated at that job or whatever. It's like it feels like it's very other centric when we go back, but when we make it there, it becomes about us. And it's like, oh, I didn't expect to think about myself in this way. And it's not in a way of guilting, shaming, or blaming oneself, but it does feel like there's some sort of recognition to be gained. that again can help, that will help us, can help us in the present or moving into the future. And again, it's like you have to mill two cards, but it feels like something that we've already like milled. Like it feels like we might think that we've already gotten everything that we can get out of those experiences or whatever. But they might have something different to offer. Next is the glittering stockpile. It's an artifact treasure. This is fire, which is interesting because this is coming off of, what were these? Water. Water, that one didn't have a color in the forest. Um, we have fire. So if you tap it, you can add fire mana, put a stash counter on glittering stockpile, sacrifice glittering stockpile, add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of stash counters on glittering stockpile. The only thing Ziatora desires is more. The glittering stockpile is interesting. Sacrifice glittering stockpile, add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of stash counters. So you can put stash counters on glittering stockpile and then use the second effect. It's like you use the effect to accumulate stock counters, stash counters. You use the first effect to accumulate stash counters, and then through sacrificing this card, you can convert them to another element. I like that this is coming out in the element, it's like fire, because if fire is the soul, or if fire holds that sort of like spark initial space, it's sort of in a way the progenitor of the other elements, in a way. I think what I like about this coming after the nosy newsy, the snooping newsy, what I like about this coming after the snooping newsy is that now there's an energy of like, first, because with the snooping newsy, it was just an energy like the perspective shifting and us like getting something different, us gaining something that might help us in the future. But this is an actual energy of like alchemizing. This is an energy of conversion. It's like after we build all of these things up, it's almost like, well, and some of those were like sacrifices in the beginning, but then it's like we make a different sacrifice to convert all of those into something new. And hold on, let me fix the blur. If Eve was here, she'd be like, "Oh, I know it's about to get good." When Rob was reading me, and, and he said something. It was the was it the something of the South? And Eve was like, "Oh, like the South is summer, good weather for growing chili peppers or something." Oh, that was so funny. Oh, a selenite sphere. I think I have a selenite sphere, and it has the thing in it. At first, because my hand is brown, it has the eye in it, and I was like, I think this has like a dark spot in it. I think this is dirty. And it was just like clear. So it was my hand. Anyway. But yeah, with the glittering stockpile, it's like this is the point where those things actually become something different. And they're like the colors are similar in these cards too. And I guess they're also, well, no, they're not completely the same. as this one, but they're more similar in these two. Maybe the snooping newsie is looking for the location of the glittering stockpile. I wonder if sacrifice is interesting. It's an interesting energy because it feels like there are things that we sacrifice because I don't want to say things that we sacrifice because we feel like we should. Um, but it feels like there are things that we sacrifice. I'm gonna cheat and grab a tarot deck. I'm not. It feels like, how do I say this? Does it have the thing in it though, Holly? Because I think somebody said the selenite spheres have those. It's like a clear part where you can see into the sphere. Uh, how do I say it? It's like sometimes if there's like a physical thing that we use or that we can see as a representation of a non-physical thing, then we can sacrifice the physical thing, either like a physical thing or a behavior or something like that. We'll sacrifice the thing or the behavior, but we'll still hold attachments to what it represented. And so sometimes it's like in the act of sacrificing the thing, we kind of sort of think we do more than we actually do because the attachments are still there. The feelings, the emotions, the whatever is still there. We've just sacrificed the representation of it without necessarily, of course, like not always, when applicable, apply. If not, then don't. But that's when we can sort of encounter like I did this and I gave up that and I'm doing all of these things that are asked of me, but I'm still not getting or going or whatever. And it's like that's because the root is still there. And we have to get to the root of it. Which is why we start out in the Waterfront District at the edge of the water. I don't know again if it's just inside, if it's just outside, or if it's like way outside. Because it's the boundary between the water and the darkness. The next card is involuntary employment, which is another fire one. Where's the last place you know you had them, Zelda? There's actually a lot of. Ah! Ooh, hold up. I think I read this wrong. There's actually a lot of fire. Ooh, no, it's on the ground. It's on the ground. I picked it up in reverse. Why does that remind me of Asbiel Angel of Ruin? Asbiel Angel of Ruin actually came out recently. I feel like it was for Virgo for some reason. I don't know. Did I use the Angelarium? Yes, I did use the Angelarium when I read the Zodiacs because um who got their own angel? Sagittarius, I think. Got the angel of Sagittarius. And Leo? Got the angel of Leo? I don't remember. Excuse me. Involuntary employment. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Create a treasure token. It's an artifact with tap. Sacrifice this artifact. Add 1 mana of any color. So here's a card that lets us create treasure tokens. And the other card created stash counters. Stash and treasure are basically interchangeable. It's interesting that these two are both like fire, but one is very like watery. This is literally an artifact treasure. It's an artifact treasure. Involuntary employment is interesting. Involuntary employment feels like and it's not even a distracting energy. I mean, it is, but it feels like it's a distraction it's one of those distractions that are so powerful that it just like grabs your attention and it forces you to like immediately address it. And it feels like and on one hand I can tie that back to again, I guess these colors match a little bit more, question mark. It's like if you get under the roots, if you enter the dark side of the Waterfront District, then you come upon the treasure that creates more and more and more stash counters. Stash counters, right? Or stock counters. Yeah, stash counters. And then you can sacrifice multiple stash counters to create multiple manas of any color. But with involuntary employment, you only get one. You it's still a mana of any color, but you only get 1 mana of any color. And what's interesting is that the glittering stockpile that gives you the opportunity to get more and more and more mana of any color costs less to cast than involuntary employment. And so it almost reads or almost feels like a sort of like hijacked manifestation that would make sense why it's like it would lead to a hypervigilance and like trying to control one's thoughts or something like that. First place you always look is on top of your That's sometimes the last place I look, and it's the first place I should look. It's like I can't find them anywhere. Have you seen my glasses? And they're like up here. It's like, oh, because after a certain point, you stop feeling it. And I guess that's interesting. That's an interesting work in here too, because there's something about that when it's like when you first move something somewhere, if you first put something on your body, you can feel it because of like the state that it has just disturbed. But the longer and like that's what the body does with smells and certain sensations, right? At first it's like you feel it, but after you become accustomed to it, then your body sort of stops alerting you to its presence. And so that could speak of things that weren't originally part of who we were, things that it could be like things that we do, people that we interact with, um, whatever. That it's like in the beginning, maybe we felt more aware of the disconnect, of some kind of disconnect. But after time goes on, it becomes a part of a reality that we accept. And so we learn to live with it. And when we learn to live with it, it feels like that's when we enter like the involuntary employment phase. Because now it's like something outside has found its way like integrated into the fabric of who we are. And so there may be things that we just like do or say that might not be reflective of like who we are, but again it's just like kind of sort of who we've been accustomed, who we've grown accustomed to being, and it's what we've grown accustomed to doing. And so maybe that's why when the snooping newsy goes back, maybe there is a point where, again, because it talked about sacrifice, right? So maybe there is a point where it's like we go through healings, we go through the journey, we do whatever. And it's almost like maybe there's a little bit of a reconnection to self that happens in a way where we start to feel the discordance with certain other things. And then maybe we realize or we come to a realization like, I've been doing this in this way because XYZ. And like, I don't even know when I stopped. Like, I don't even know when I got used to this or accustomed to this. And it's interesting because it kind of makes me think there was a YouTuber who was talking about a book. I think he was talking about like toxic relationships, like narcissistic relationships, and how like a lot of really confident and like secure within themselves people can find themselves in relationship like in toxic relationships, and about how like surprising it was. And he said that it's like the narcissist sort of like, or the toxic person in the relationship feeds on putting, like basically stripping someone of their confidence, stripping them of the thing that makes them them. Like they get something out of that. And this doesn't necessarily feel like a specific person more so than it just does like an energy, or more so than it's like the world that we've grown to accept. But again, in a very like real sense, that can be something as simple as like when you're younger, you have dreams, you have goals, you have ambitions, and there are things that you want to do. And when you're young, some people, a lot of people, some people, when some young people, because they haven't experienced the real world, they feed those dreams more. But as life happens and after they encounter person after person after person that's like, you should like find a real job, get something secure, like dreams don't happen. That's not a reality. I know that's what we tell kids, like when you're growing up, it's like that's when you're a kid. Be an adult. And then it's like it just becomes this thing that sort of naturally happens with a lot of people. And then the person who had the dream, who was discouraged or who didn't find any whatever from anybody else, who their dream doesn't work out in the time that they wanted to or whatever, and then it's like they become the person that tells other people like, like be real, be realistic, get something stable. Like everybody works a job that they don't like to get money to do stuff, hopefully to hopefully have enough money to do at least some things that they do like. Like that's just how it is. And so it's kind of sort of that energy where again it's like if we were to dig deeper or dig our heels in with the to find that glittering stockpile, the glittering stockpile can give us even more. And it's like it's this involuntary employment. It's like the things that we end up bringing about into the world aren't even necessarily things that we want to bring into the world. That's why it's involuntary. All right, that's not, I mean, that's part of the reason why it's involuntary, but that's not really why it's involuntary. It's involuntary on many fronts. Yeah, very much so. Worse when we become our own bully. I have a phone wallet and I dropped it at work. The next card is Rob the Archives. I laughed because it said Rob. And I was like, oh, like Rob. But then I was like, oh, this isn't Rob like a person. This is Rob like an action. This is a verb, Rob, not are names proper nouns? I don't know. We got another casualty. Our yeah, casualty. This is one fire. So we've had two fire, we've had three fire. Now we got one fire. As you cast this spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power one or greater. When you do, copy this spell. Copy the other one said copy this spell too. And then we have the one about the facsimile with the angel, right? And there are two cards that make facsimiles by sacrificing something. So this says exile the top two cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. Well, I guess stealth's out of the question. So I'm still like new to Magic. I'm a new when it comes to Magic. Because I would think that if you exile something, it takes it out of play. But there are so many cards that it's like exile and then bring it back to the battlefield, exile and then use it immediately, or like as long as this card is exiled then it can continue to do this thing. And it's interesting again that it's an energy of exile because we have the Waterfront District on the fringe, on the borders of that connection connective sort of energy, right? So with this card, see, and then if you sacrifice a creature, you can get it back too. The top two cards of your library, you may play those cards this turn. There is an immediacy to this card that is interesting. And again, since this is the element of fire and fire is related to the soul, and this is Rob the Archives, it does in essence hold an Akashic energy. But it doesn't feel because of the blurb. Well, stealth is out of, well, I guess stealth is out of the question, isn't it? It feels like it's not something that can remain like hidden, which again is interesting because it's found on the outside, on the fringe, on the border. And so, because of that in particular, it feels like if fire is the element of the soul and water is the element of connection, that which flows between everything, It's almost like Rob the Archives is this energy where it's like the border of our internal selves and our innermost selves. If the innermost self is like your soul or the like you and your truest authenticity, you before the world, are you outside of the world? It's like there. And if you've ever seen, a lot of you probably haven't, but if you've seen the Demon Slayer movie, it makes me think of when those people invaded dreams. So people invaded the dreams of the Demon Slayers, and they went to the edge of the dream, and they had a special knife or whatever that could cut the edge of the dream, and it would put them basically into the space of the person's soul, and they were going to steal some. I guess they were going to steal the soul of the people. It's been a minute since I saw the movie. Okay, but it was like that was the border, that was the boundary between like the dream self and the self, and in some ways it feels similar, and I think that's done. So Broker's Charm. Choose one. Target creature you control gets +1 toughness, +0 endurance until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Or you can destroy a target enchantment, or you can draw 2 cards. Exiled means to place beyond immediate proximity, so it makes sense that it can be returned. Oh. Exiled is also interesting, again, for this like boundary barriered energy, like this in between the water and the abyss. Oh, the abyss, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense. Because both the water and the abyss are watery, but the abyss is the abyss, and the water is the water. And see, that's what also gives it this energy. It's like, it's interesting because it feels like we would be crossing from the deep end into the abyss, or we would be crossing from the water into the abyss. But when we cross into the abyss, we actually like breach the surface, which is again why it feels like it's closer to the core of who we are. So Broker's Charm can destroy an enchantment. Who this? Is this my mother? It is my mother. This is Broker's Charm, by the way. See, this is an energy of making deals. This feels like involuntary employment. And it's interesting because it, instead of like taking over the creature, no, it doesn't. I was gonna say it like destroys it. Hold up, wait, I might have to because this felt like making a bad deal. But The mana on Broker's Charm, it's water, light, in the forest. Water, light in the forest brings up more of this energy, which is like more literally like the forest, the water, and make disappear, and then I guess the light in the angel, even though the angel is non-aspected, but the light is definitely here. The light is definitely here. And so again, it feels like it's playing on this energy of like stepping into the abyss breaches something to the surface. And it's like, what? It makes me think of the Nine of Wands in the Kim Cran's Wild Unknown Tarot. It makes me think of the Nine of Wands and the Wild Unknown Tarot, and it also makes me think of this is very, very fitting. It makes me think of the capital I versus the EYE reading. Because it was like with the Eight of Cups that was in the Tarot of Dreams or the Gilded Tarot. I don't know. Let me try to finish the thought before I forget it. Because it's like after we did, and again, it's interesting that all of this, there's so much about sacrifice here. It's like as we make that Eight of Cups journey, when we get to the top, we breach into the Ace of Pentacles. And with the wild unknown, sometimes that Nine of Wands has an energy of like, we're operating under moonlight, but as soon as you hit that last step, you actually step into sunlight. Like you step into the daytime, even though it's been all this moon energy. And it's like, whoa, what? Like, what's happening? And that feeling is kind of here too. It is here, which is why the Broker's Charm is interesting. And so now there's an energy. It's almost like with that involuntary employment, this is the space. It's almost like where we break ourselves out of that involuntary employment. Because it feels like the Broker's Charm, this would be something that we're like conditioned to be averse to. It's like when someone's like, oh, don't trust that person. They're like super shady and they're super seedy and they do this and they do that. And like it's somebody that you trust. And then one day you actually meet that person and they're not any of the things that other person said they were. And then depending on the situation, you might look at the other person like, if you said all this stuff about this person and they weren't anything like this, like what would make you like, why? Like what would be like, why? It makes them look kind of questionable. Because like this person is amazing. This person is selfless and generous and like not any of the things that you said they were. I didn't expect this. Well, I every time I do something like this, I'm like, again, and it's the Pisces in me. This is why I believe that everything, everything is a tool, can be a tool, can be used. Some things just naturally can elucidate things in a certain way or illuminate things in a certain way because of the nature of the media or the medium, because of the nature of the medium and the nature of the medium, if you know what I mean. But both the person and the thing. And Rob was like, we're all mediums to a certain extent. I was like, well, I'm a triple XL. I wish I was a medium. I can't even imagine being a medium. larges are like extra large. I could do a double X because you can find a lot of things in double X are like extra large. Anyway, sorry, tangent. So the broker's charm actually gets you, and this is interesting because I'm watching a buddy play D&D, and right now they're trapped in, not trapped, but right now they're in the Underdark, and they're looking for a rune of passage to get them to the surface. And this is basically like a rune of passage that will get you to the surface. And so the next card is Masked Bandits. And it's a raccoon rogue. So we have the human rogue and the snooping newsie. This has vigilance and menace. Exile Masked Bandits for 2 mana. You can exile Masked Bandits from your hand. Target land gains tap. Add dark, fire, or forest until Masked Bandits is cast from exile. You may cast Masked Bandits for as long as it remains exiled. See, this is one of those cards that I was talking about. It's like, while it's exiled, it has this continued effect. What's interesting, though, is with the Masked Bandits, I don't know all of these. I know Menace is an effect that if you attack with the creature that has Menace, it has to be blocked by 2 other creatures to successfully be blocked. Most of the time you can block with 1 unless it's like a flying monster and you can't fly or you don't have reach. But this one is like it requires 2 to be blocked. I don't remember what vigilance does. I could look it up, but I'm not gonna. I could, but I'm not gonna. The trash pandas. But what's interesting is because it's like you may cast this for as long as it remains exiled. So it has this energy. It's like from outside, it's able to affect things inside. And like, look at these energies. And these are both alternate art cards too, which is interesting. They share the forest, but one is dark and fire. The other is light and water. Hey Vicky, how you doing? So again, it's like it feels like it's this weird thing where the Masked Bandits, this is how the energy is, whatever, right? Like this is the one that we would trust. It's these like very outside individuals, are these like whatever. And I guess it's interesting how we view celebrity, especially how we view celebrity in more of a businessy sort of sense. It's like how we can um, use other people as guideposts for what we personally do. So it's like, Steve Jobs' closet is full of the same thing because Steve Jobs doesn't want to waste any brain power deciding what he wants to wear. So I'm going to do the same thing. And it's like, well, Steve Jobs said that, blah, 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 blah. Or like this person is really renowned and respected for this thing. So what they like, but it's like, it's this point where it's like just because it works for someone else or just because it is someone else doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for us. And then maybe with Broker's Charm, it's just the energy of like, these are the things that are for us, that work for us, that get us where we want to go. These are the things that we sort of like pick up from other people. These are ways that we allow ourselves to be influenced by others, even without them necessarily directly doing so. but it does nothing for us. And again, it's interesting that the broker's charm puts us within the elements of this land untouched by time. This land that time cannot touch. Nothing can touch it. It's out of time. For that, it's out of everything. And that's where the broker's charm gets us. That's the rune of passage where we go like right there. But again, like this energy is so weird though. It's so weird how it feels so like twisted to keep us in a space of involuntary employment. But again, that's kind of sort of what the world has become in a lot of places, where we contribute to and keep alive systems that don't really benefit anybody. Or if they do, they benefit like very few people. And it's like we will wholeheartedly support and believe because we think that one day it will be us on the other side. And sometimes for some people, they do find their way. For a lot of people, they don't. And it's like the lottery. In order for the lottery to be seen as legitimate, even though the odds are as low as they are, somebody has to win. It's just like a casino. Somebody has to win, or else, like, you would realize, because it's like it's one thing to know that your odds are extremely low, but it has to be. I'm very much the person like, well, it has to be somebody. If it's 1 out of 1,000,000,000,000, I could be that one. I could be that. I'm like that. I'm a Pisces. Sue me. But it's like in order to like show people like, hey, this is legit, it's real, just keep pouring money into it. Just keep pouring time and energy and effort, and maybe someday it'll eventually potentially be you. And for some people, it's enough to keep playing. But again, it's like that's the reason why the glittering horde costs less mana to use, and it has the potential to give you a lot more than the involuntary employment. Night, Zelda. I hope you get to see your daughter and you find your glasses. Excuse me. So only got 3 cards left technically. So the next card is Rafine's Tower. It's another land. I got 3 lands in this one. It's a plain island swamp. So there are, I think, well, I guess there's more than 3 because the forest is also one. Oh, the plains is plain, the island is water, and the swamp is dark. Rafine's Tower. Tap to add light, water, or dark. Rafine's Tower enters the battlefield tapped, cycling 3. So for 3 mana, you can discard this card and draw another card. The Obscura's Cloud. Hold up. Let me try to read this. That was loud. The Obscura's Cloud Spire dominates the skyline. Its eye, a beacon of progress that sees all. Why is that so Sauron? This is the card. Light, water, or dark. This is light, water, and forest. So it feels like this tower is in the middle of both of these. This one is water and dark. It's like on one side of the tower is the Waterfront District, on the other side is this forest. I don't think that is the tower. I don't think this is the tower. It's not. But there's something perceivably guarded or mysterious or blank about this tower that feels like it makes it more, it feels like it feels more difficult. And sometimes we do the easier thing because it's easier. But again, that was the energy of the sacrifice. It's like when we're sacrificing the representation of a thing, sometimes more than the actual thing itself. And so, even though the representation is gone, the root is still there. So, something still lingers. The last card is, this is why I was laughing, because I was like, oh my gosh. Death, right? And one of my friends said he started watching, the one who was sending me Snapchats, he said he started watching The Hobbit yesterday or this week. I haven't watched The Hobbit yet. I did watch Lord of the Rings. My foil card is murder. That's why I was like, oh my gosh, why is it murder? No, that's when the angel was out. Because the angel of modernity came out. And then I looked at the foil card and it was murder. I was like, oof. I mean, it does say make disappear. And how does a rogue make things disappear? You got a problem. We can make it disappear. Murder. Destroy target creature. Now, this one says Ob Nixilis decided the fastest way to seize control of New Capenna would be to usurp the networks of power already hidden there. Xander's maestros were the first to fall. See, that, it, again, for probably obvious reasons, it immediately makes me think of involuntary employment, because it mentioned, it's like taking control. What did it say? The fastest way to seize control of New Capenna would be to usurp the networks of power already hidden there. So it's like it's networks of power that are hidden. It's networks of like hidden power. So it's like it's these things that we're not fully conscious of. It's these things that we're not fully aware of, which is again why the snooping newsie has to go to the border, to the waterfront, to the edge of the deep end in the abyss, or the water in the abyss. And again, it feels like it speaks to these attachments that we sort of like pick up, that we get accustomed to, that work their way into us when we don't even, it feels like there's enough of a conscious realization and recognition when we're in those spaces, but it doesn't feel like we're at the same time connected to the truth of who we are. So it's not fully like, conditioning and programming. There is choice in there, but like that's the thing about involuntary employment. It's like that's when we start making choices and decisions that um that we don't really want to make all the time. And because of that, it feels especially sinister. And it feels especially, and that's going back to the masked bandits energy, like the masked bandits that can affect sort of what's happening on the field from outside of play, from outside of the field. And it's like, as long as they're exiled, they can continue to do whatever. I haven't yet seen a card that that will remove something from exile. So, I don't know. Oh, right here, murder. You could murder them, maybe. It says destroy target creature, and so can you destroy it if it's exiled? I don't know. Ariel, what's up? And it's interesting because it's like murder would be the thing that maybe that's what this maybe Snooping Newsy is like. If we clean this up in a certain way, it's like I can transform my pain and hurt and trauma into healing, joy, blessings, and abundance. I can get into the root and like handle it, address it, face it, work it in a way where it's like with that abscess, with that growth gone, it leaves room for something else to grow, something extremely abundant. And maybe that's when we work our way back into this side of the energy where it's like life begins to return to a place that was incapable of holding it because of what transpired and because of what happened. The nuclear radiation would have killed it. But we reach this point, it's like, and nature is the first thing that comes back. Nature is the thing that lets us know that it's now becoming more and more hospitable. It's becoming more and more survivable. Now, I don't know if, just because the trees and the flowers are growing doesn't necessarily mean that, there's enough oxygen there to sustain a full human capacity or need for oxygen. Maybe the plants are still reoxygenizing the atmosphere in that area. But anyway, it feels like, again, with the mass bandits and the involuntary employment, it's like ways that we go about, it's like ways that we fall prey to conditioning to bring about misery in our own lives and the lives of others, or things that we don't want. It doesn't necessarily have to be misery. And then my last card is, guess what it is? Guess what it is? It's a treasure token. So again, like this is talking about treasure. All of these are talking about treasure, but with involuntary employment, we get one. The glittering stash is capable of giving us as many as we create. But there's the treasure token. And blue is an element that's on both of these cards, but like this is, and see, that's another thing. Like the glittering stockpile, that's again why it feels like it's like in the abyss we come into, like we breach the surface. Because the blue here is like all around it. This exists in the blue. And it's almost like the blue fog. I don't know if it's Niflheim, but it feels like the treasure can like rise from the fog itself. And that's what gives it this sort of unlimited sort of energy. But here, like, it's so controlled and so directed that it's like that's why it doesn't give as much, and it costs more to use. Now the other side of the treasure token, I wanna, like, when are you due? Hey Ariel, do you know if there was there, you're on a roller coaster? Was there like a solar flare today or something? at approximately between 8:40 and 8:50 a.m. Central US time. Due August 12th. You are huge. Leo baby. Maybe she'll come on Lionsgate. Have Lionsgate baby. We have a treasure token. I'm loving all the treasure. This treasure is interesting too, because there was the tie to the capital I versus the EYE reading that I did. But that was another thing in that reading, because these treasures can create mana of any color. And that reading was all about us learning the elements in relation to the other elements. Because when we understand each element as a function of the others, it brings us closer to the understanding of the energy before it manifests as that element. It's like if you understand fire in relation to all the elements, and water in relation to all the elements, and earth and air, then we start to get an understanding of what ether is. We start to get an understanding of what energy is before it starts to take form, before it differentiates and separates. And it feels like maybe that's what this is about too. And that's why it's like it's untouchable. Because it's almost like as things leave that space, they become other things. But nothing can necessarily enter that space. Maybe it's because like as soon as it enters that space, it's instantly blended into the all. It's no longer distinguishable from anything else that's already there. I don't know. But it is interesting. I didn't even catch that any element tie to all of these treasures. But again, it's like involuntary employment will give you one. And I think that's why it's like, I think that's another reason why it kind of hooks us a little bit. I'm not even going to talk about hierophants because, I don't need to. But on the back side of the treasure card, there are 5 crime families in New Capenna. You can see them here. I'm literally pulling, I got a set booster box of Magic the Gathering cards. This one is the Obscura. Information is power. It's water, light, and dark, which is interesting. Because this is the Obscura's tower. Yeah. The Obscura's cloud spire dominates the skyline, its eye a beacon of progress that sees all. Information is power. And I feel like, too, when we understand, if it's a known thing that information is power, and it's interesting that it's just information. Information itself doesn't necessarily, at least in my opinion, the word information itself doesn't necessarily have any connotations about how true that information is. It's just information. Is it factual information? Is it non-factual information? Is it real? Is it not real? Is it like how much of it is the truth? Like what's the truth grading here? Like is this a lie that's like 15% true? And my threshold for information is like if it's at least 10% true, I'm gonna believe it. So it's like, oh well, let me tell you a 15% truth lie. But again, I think that's another thing, that getting closer to the abyss, and again, like this abyss isn't the abyss because it actually breaches you, us. So it's like it's something that's incredibly bright that looks dark on the outside. And my brain just died. So that was that. That was interesting. Again, I love doing these. I was actually going to do that the last time I bought Magic cards. And it, like I think I sent Reem some pictures because I was like, oh my gosh, this card and that card. And there was a Time Wizard maybe or something like that. I don't remember. I have like so many more. I have a whole box of boxes. I'm not going through all of these on the camera. So these are the other two art cards. It's interesting that the last time these are Elf Druid Rogues with the other Broker's Charm. This Broker's Charm came out with the Raccoon Rogues, the Masked Bandits. They're in there somewhere. So what does the other one do? Because now I'm interested. I'm intrigued. So these are fire, forest, and light. But I guess that's just, is that light or is that the plains? The plains are light, I think. So these are Rakish Revelers. When Rakish Revelers enter the battlefield, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. And this is another one that has an exile effect. So exile Rakish Revelers from your hand. Target land gains tap, add fire, earth, or light until Rakish Revelers is cast from exile. You may cast Rakish Revelers for as long as it remains exiled. So it's interesting that with this Broker's Charm, no, I gotta find the other ones. Oh, they're literally right here. So they both share the elements of fire and forest, but the Rakish Revelers give you light, fire, in the forest with this Broker's Charm. And the other ones give you dark, fire, and forest with the other one. And it's interesting that they have the power. It affects the land. The land is what everything grows on. It's what everything grows out of. The land is almost quite literally the environment. It is literally the environment. And the way that lands work, like land is the basis of your mana pool in Magic. So it's like in the card game system, you pull magic from the land. You pull mana from the land. And you use that mana to summon creatures, to cast spells, to do all of this stuff. But it comes from the land. It comes from the environment. These are exile. It's like once they're exiled, they have the ability to affect the nature of the mana that you pull from the land. And so again, it's like because of that, it is what it is. It's over. That was it. Thank you. That was something. Trying to find something cool for her. The Schumann did spike in the night. So we had a big wave hit. I'm looking for almost specifically for reasons 8:40 to 8:50 Central AM today. I was going to look and see if we had. Oh, wait. There have been like 20 plus solar flares over the last few days. Okay. Leona. Ooh. And that's not even what I actually wanted to do. I'll just put all those cards away. And I still got all these here. I don't know where I'm going to put all these. I could stop by the store and get a box tomorrow. I think I might actually do that. I think I will. I will do that. I will definitely do that. Now I can't get these back in here. I'm going to cheat. I'm cheating. I'm just stuffing them in the flap. Just going to stuff these in. Oh, but if I stuff them in the flaps, then they're going to be on top of the thing. Well, who are these? The Gala Greeters? So actually, I'll read the Obscura. So here are the different families of New Capenna with the actual breakdowns. But the Obscura is the one that came out so for us in this pack, so I'll read it. The Obscura are the gifted magicians. That makes sense because it was the magician's assistant that was the art card, right? The Obscura are talented wizards and mystics who use their power to deceive and blackmail. These are 5 crime families, so that's the theme, okay? They're all associated with crime in some way. The Obscuras are talented wizards and mystics who use their power to deceive and blackmail, using distractions, illusions, and hidden mechanisms. They orchestrate scenarios and manipulate outcomes to their benefit. This is literally that involuntary employment energy. With that Eye of Sauron and that whatever. They endeavor to maintain a facade of normalcy in their everyday lives, which allows them to run their schemes without disruption. Well, no family is good in this expansion, but that's like literally the energy that was coming out. So very on brand for the Obscura, and I didn't even know that yet. My promo card, though, is Gala Greeters. And this is a forest energy creature. This is an elf druid, an alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. To put a +1/+1 counter on Gala Greeters, create a tapped treasure token and gain 2 life. And we just got a treasure token. So the Gala Greeters. So the Gala Greeters carry an energy of community. I mean, literally, because you can create another +1/+1 Gala Greeters. Or put a +1/+1 counter on Gala Greeters, so you can make these tougher in power and endurance. You can create the treasure token, which we got. See, and it's interesting that treasure token was on the Obscura family. Because again, it's that energy. That's the part of involuntary employment where it's like, it's almost like once it's set up, it takes care of itself. Just like the angel is felt like a remnant, like on the other side, that's also it. Like the Obscura energy, it's about like creating remnants. So it's like about indoctrinating in a way where we become our own worst critics, we become our own worst nightmares, we become the greatest things in our own lives that keep us from doing whatever it is that we want to do, to the point where the energy itself doesn't even have to do anything anymore, which is again why it can operate from the outside. It's like in the worst way when you plant a seed of doubt in someone's mind that takes root and it grows. And then it's like you don't even have to do anything. Or if that happened to you, and we talked about that in the very real way, right? How dreams die and how people become bullies or how people become critics of other people because of what happened to them and in their experience and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's like, be realistic. Life isn't a fairy tale. You're not going to win the lottery. You're not going to be a famous singer, actor, whatever, dancer, whatever. Like, get a real job. Be miserable like everybody else. We all work jobs that we hate to pay the bills. It's just a part of life. And it's like, but it doesn't have to be, though. It's like, who said it? Information is power. And because information is power, misinformation is also power. Anyway, that's not even that kind of is what I wanted to do, but that's not why I got on here. I'm just gonna pull one of these. The heart portal, magical dimensions, oracle cards, and activators. To see what's up. Maybe it'll be about that. Maybe this is it. I don't know. I need to go to bed. What was that? Light, water, and dark. And it was about how, because again, I guess water is the thing that flows in between everything. So it can go either way. It's not necessarily, I guess no element is aspected as good or bad. I was thinking about that today for some reason. Maybe on the way home. I don't even remember what I was thinking about specifically. The card that came out is the Promise with Galactic Guidance at the bottom of the deck. 18 and 38. The Promise is soulmates, attraction, and partnership. What's interesting, though, is the colors look like the colors in the Snooping Newsy, especially like with these buildings or whatever over there. Or crystals. Those are crystals, sorry. With the crystals and the like the sparkles, it makes me think of the Snooping Newsy and the glittering Stockpile. And again, with the Promise, it's just an energy of like, it's almost like the other like the broker's charm is a list of like guarantees or a list of promises. So if you knew that something was promised to you, and if you knew the conditions of that, like of the disbursement of that thing, then misinformation couldn't be used to get you to do other things to try to get that thing. It's like, I don't have to do this. Like, I've read the terms and conditions, and nowhere in the terms and conditions does it say that I have to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, F, J, 2, 3, 4, 7 to get this. It says that it's mine by sheer virtue of me being who I am. So give it to me. And then it's almost like, I mean, with that train of thought, it would almost be like, well, since you have decreed it, so it shall be, because this is promised to you. So we can't legally keep this. But you didn't need to know that. But it's interesting because that energy has come out before. There's been an energy before of like something, an energy that knows what is yours before you know what is yours. And so it'll position itself in a way to give you what is already rightfully yours, to give you what is already coming your way. And it will create an obstacle course or whatever mechanisms that we then abide by to try to get the thing. And that's how we play into it. I don't remember exactly where that came, but it was coming up for a second. And like the easiest way to communicate it was always like, in a work situation, I guess, or even in not a work situation. It's like, hey, like there's this person that it's almost like if somebody already had their eye on you and they were already going to approach you, but they told somebody else about it first. And so this person's like, oh, I'll go put in a good word with you with this person. If you do this, do that, whatever. But it's like they were already interested in you. The position was already yours. Like just because you didn't know that. And again, that's the power of like, sometimes that's the power of who comes to us with information first. Just like in the example before, it's like there's this person that you trust and like, oh, that other person is shady. Like, don't trust them. They do this, they do that. And then you meet the person and they're like, they're none of that. And it's like, what? But because the other person got to you first, that's why information could be tricky. And I guess the information age doesn't make it any easier. But that's also the beauty of resonance, right? So take this one as it resonates. And don't take anything that is not of resonance that is not for you. Leave it, okay? Star Family Assistance and Cooperation. Galactic Guidance is interesting because, again, it feels like another outside. It is another outside energy, but it feels like an outside energy that's coming to counter the other outside energy. But it's like with all these outside energies that you can't control, eventually at some point, it's like eventually at some point it'd be easier to just start making choices and decisions for yourself. To start moving, walking, allow your internal, like one of my buddies said it best. It's like if you're navigating with GPS and it cuts out, and it's like if you're in a dead zone, like if you don't have signal, it's like just start driving. The signal will eventually reconnect and then you'll be rerouted. But it's like sometimes it's like no matter how long we stay still, that guidance will never come. It's like we just got to start moving. What was I saying? But yeah, it's like that. I'm tired. I'm ready for bed. Okay. So that was fun. That was interesting. That was a lot. I think I had thoughts about the last reading. I did have thoughts about the last reading when I used the Prime Muse Tarot, but that's fine. Yes, that's what I was talking about. Where we sort of like start making choices and decisions and move on our own accord. Because that's another thing. See, but it's like that's why life is so like tricky though. Because perspective is a lot. Because I would say that, like as we live life and as we feel resonance in motion, or as we feel resonance while we're in motion, then that'll help guide us that'll help kickstart our own internal guidance, maybe. But the reason why I say perspective is tricky, and because of old knowledge and information, but again, like that's the whole obscura thing. And it's interesting that again, the obscura is information is power, and obscura sounds like obscure, to hide. And again, it may not even be completely hidden. It may only be partially hidden. Like if there was this big long sentence, right? If there's an entire paragraph and you only cover one word, and that word is like not, it's like do not, da 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 da. But we only read do da 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 da. And then we're like, I'm doing it. Why isn't it happening? Oh, my eyes be like that. I feel like I've definitely gotten questions wrong on tests before because I did not see the not. Like my brain just completely skipped over like which one of these is not correct. And I was like, oh, I just went for the most correct one. And it's like, okay, we're not even playing the same game. Because you're trying to find out which truth is the most true when the question is like which one of these is not true. So you're trying to pick the most true truth, and out of the 3 ones that are true, when the question is like which of the 4 is false. And then I get the test back and I'm like, how did I get this wrong? And then I reread it. I'm like, oh, it said not. Oof. That's one thing that I won't miss about not being a student. Because honestly, it happened more than it should have. But it's fine. Anyway, this was something. I hope you have a good whatever whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. Thank you, Holly and Zelda and Ariel, for stopping by. It was fun. Understanding the assignment. Yes, very much so. And I guess that's it. Maybe I'll come and open up a different booster. No, I probably won't. That'll probably be long. I didn't expect for it to take me as long as it took me either. Was there anything else I want to put on that? I guess not. That feels pretty succinct. So I will catch y'all whenever I catch y'all. It might be. I'm waiting. And Vicky, sorry, I forgot. Thank you also, Vicky, for being here. I'm waiting on something to come in the mail that was supposed to be here like Monday. And it's still not here. So I'll be live when that comes, and I'll probably pull the Prime Muse Tarot to see if they collaborate. Because sometimes when I get decks close to each other, they work together. Sometimes it's just anyway. All right. Good night.